All right, so this is day 4 of Algebra Chapter 8. Hopefully you got your questions answered yesterday when we started factoring with the box and diamond method. So this is just going to be a little review for you if you are confused by what you were looking at yesterday. We'll take a few minutes here to kind of go over those problems and kind of give you those answers so you can kind of complete this back of the worksheet for today. Again, I will not be here today, or on Friday, I should say. My apologies again if you are having problems. Again, please come in and ask questions, and then we can get you all squared away. So, number one, it says 5 minus 2x plus x squared. So, what you're looking at here is you're trying to look at putting these trinomials in standard form, okay? So, in this case, we always, if you remember, we always lead with the highest coefficient, or I should say the term that has the highest power. So, in this case, the highest power is the one that has the value of 2 in it, usually in a trinomial for a quadratic. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this 5 minus 2x plus x squared as x squared minus 2x plus 5. Okay, so that's what we do in standard form. Again, in this case, you do not have to factor these at all. Again, you're just practicing rewriting them in that standard form, okay? The reason why is because we always lead with that highest term of x. That way it kind of looks more pleasing to the eye and it's easier for us to factor once we get it in this form. So number 2, you're looking at that 11x minus 2x squared plus 9. So again, we're going to lead off. We're going to do negative 2x squared plus 11x plus 9. And hopefully you're seeing that there's, again, a pattern developing with those values. So in this case, you just have to rewrite it as such. All right, and then number 3, if we look, x squared minus 9, it is already in that factored form. So in this case, or in that standard form, so in this case, x squared minus 9. Number 4, if you look, we just have to do a little swapping. So in this case, 6 plus 10x becomes 6x plus, or 10x plus 6. Number 5, if we're looking, we have 7x squared plus 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it as 7x squared plus the value of 5. And then if we look for number 6, we're going to have x squared plus 7x minus 2. All right, so these ones are what you're going to be looking at in terms of writing them in standard form, okay? So in this case, again, having that highest term, so in this case, that 2 for that power leading, and then the x, and then the constant afterwards, so just the number. All right, so 1 through 6, not too bad. Now, number 7 through 14, and then on the backside as well, those are problems 7 through 12 on the backside. You are going to have to factor, okay? So if you remember, we have this thing called standard form. What we want to do is we want to get this area, so in this case, if you remember our generic rectangle, the area written as our product, okay? So 2 values that we can multiply to get this. All right, so again, we used the box and diamond method yesterday. So I'm going to do a couple of various problems on this sheet, so just in case you get confused. Again, this will be very helpful for you to practice on your own, but again, if you are struggling, this is definitely a way to go. Number 7, we're going to take a look here. We got x squared minus 16x plus 63. I'm going to rewrite this as terms of x squared minus 16x plus that value of 63. All right, so now I rewrote it in that standard form just like 1 through 6. But instead, this time I'm going to rewrite them as my factors now. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to draw our box, and we are going to draw our diamond. So that box and diamond method, sorry. All right, so again, you were talking about that x squared minus 16x plus 63. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up that box and diamond. So when you do that, all right, your job is, again, to figure out in the top of your diamond what those values multiply to. So in this case, you're going to multiply your outside, so that x squared and 63. And you're going to get that 63x squared. And then you're going to add to your middle term. So in this case, that negative 16x. So again, very similar to the problems that we've done in the past. Now, in this case, what we got to do is we got to find 2 terms that multiply to 63 and add up to a negative 16. So the biggest thing I can tell you is probably list out your factors of 63. This makes it really easy when you're trying to figure it out. The first thing I can come up with is 1 in 63. If we look, not really. This case, 1 in 63, again, if you add them together, you get 64. If you subtract them, you get 62. So in this case, we have a value that's negative, so probably not those factors. But there are another factor that could do it, which is 7 and 9. So 9 times 7 gives me 63. So in this case, if I look here, I'm adding to a negative. So in this case, one of my answers has to at least be negative. But if you also notice, we were multiplying to a positive. So the other one has to be negative as well. So in this case, my factors are both going to be negative. In this case, negative 7x and negative 9x. So those are the values that multiply to 63 and add up to a negative 16. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those in my box and pull them out. So in this case, what I have is I have that negative 7x as well as that negative 9x. And they are all multiplying to 63. And then they're multiplying to that x squared, okay? So just like when we did with those box and diamonds, what we're going to do is we're going to pull out everything with our factors. So in this case, my x squared and my negative 7, the only thing I can pull out there is an x. An x squared and a 9x, if I'm looking this way, the only thing I can pull out of there is an x. Now I'm going to go up top here, negative 7 and 63. The only thing I can pull out of that one is just a negative 7. And then the other one, all I can pull out of there is a negative 9. So in this case, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at my factors that are on the bottom here. So in this case, this one and this one right here. So in this case, my factors for x squared minus 16x plus 63 are going to be the factors of x minus 9 and x minus 7. Okay, so that is my final answer for my problem there. Okay, so the box and diamond allows me to figure out what actually multiplied to those values. So in this case, x minus 9 multiplied with that x minus 7. All right, so that is one of our examples. The other example that I'm going to look at is a problem where you have to find the greatest common factor. So in this case, I'm going to skip down here to a little bit. I'm going to go to problem number 12 here, okay? Problem number 12 is pretty similar to problem 7, except you're going to notice one small difference. We have a 4x squared plus 8x minus 60. What we're going to do here, though, is the first step we always have to do when we're doing it outside of writing it in standard form, we have to make sure that we find the GCF. If we look here, all of these things are divisible by a value, right? So in this case, they're all divisible by 4. So I can take out a 4 from every single one of these terms. In this case, 4 from a 4x squared. So if I rewrite it a little bit, if I pull out a 4, I'm going to be left with just x squared on the inside from 4x squared. For my 8x, I'm going to have a positive 2x. And from a negative 60, I'm going to have a negative 15. All right, so in this case, what this allows me to do is it allows me to then figure out on the inside what my actual factors are without having to multiply with that 4. So in this case, that 4 is just outside. Again, we'll put it back in there eventually. Just to make it easier for ourselves, we're just going to look at the inside 2 factor. So again, in this case, I'm going to set up my box and diamonds, the same thing that I've done in the past. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to multiply. So first thing I'm going to look at is that diamond. I'm multiplying 2 of my outside terms, so x squared and negative 15. So I get negative 15x squared. I am adding to that middle term, which is a positive 2x. Now, again, I'm going to use the same kind of idea. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out 2 factors that can multiply to a negative 15 and add to 2x. All right, so again, list out your factors, but in this case, for time purposes, the values are going to be a positive 5x and a negative 3x. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of those values into my box. So in this case, I have x squared, my negative 15, and my other two are 5x and negative 3x. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my greatest common factor so I can pull them out. In this case, 5x and x, if I'm looking down column 1, I can just pull out an x from that. Negative 15 and negative 3. The best thing that I can pull out of those is a negative 3. X squared and negative 3x. If I look and I pull those out, I just have an x. And then the top row, in this case 5x and negative 15, will give me a value of just 5. So now my factors are on the outside, which is that x and 5 and x minus 3. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write x plus 5, x minus 3. And now some of you are probably wondering, where does the 4 come back into play? Well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to write it on the outside. So in this case, 4, and then multiplied with that x plus 5, and then x minus 3. So in this case, that is my simplified form, okay? So those are how you factor. Again, you have a bunch of different example problems on here. So hopefully that answers your question in terms of how to actually factor itself. The last problem I wanted to look at was just an example like number 10 here. Number 10, 16x squared minus 9. A lot of you are going to look and say, well, there's no x term there, all right? Well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of set up the same thing. First and foremost, it's written in standard form, so we don't have to do anything special to it. There's nothing that I can pull out of 16 and a negative 9 for a GCF. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that same old idea of box and diamond. All right, so in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm multiplying to a negative 144x squared. All right, and you're going to wonder how we got those. Remember, we're just multiplying 16 and negative 9. Those are my two outside terms. And then I'm going to add, in this case, to my middle. What you're going to notice, no middle term, so no x term, if you will. In this case, that value is just going to be a 0. All right, so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at a value, two values I can multiply to a negative 144 and add to 0. In this case, the only factors that do that actually are negative 12 and positive 12. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite these values in my box, so negative 12x and 12x. My values that I'm multiplying to, so in this case, that value of negative 9 and the other value of 16x squared. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out those factors. So in this case, my factors that I can pull out from a 16x squared and 12x, in this case, will give me a positive 4x. My negative 12 and negative 3, what I can do there is I can just pull out a negative 3 from both of those. $16x squared and 12x, I can pull out just a 4x from both of those as well. And the last term is that negative 9 and 12. So in this case, I can just pull out a 3. And what you'll notice here is I have those values. So in this case, my factors are on the outside again, that 4x minus 3 and the 4x plus 3. And in this case, those are my final factors, okay? So those are the three different types of examples that you'll see. Again, we'll talk more on Monday about different types that you can use to actually, in terms of factoring, that are actually kind of cool to look at, especially when you start really getting into the nuts and bolts of it. So again, hopefully this video helps you out. Again, I'll be back on Monday, so please let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me to email. Otherwise, again, I will be back soon, and hopefully, again, you can get your questions answered. All right, have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.